Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your man EGlaze, and guess what? We are live. Show number 50. We started this back when this whole pandemic corona thing started. Started off as a little IG show, and now we're 50 shows in, and I couldn't ask for a better guest to be my 50th. He's not just a friend. He's like my brother, my younger brother, even though he acts older than I do. But he's got more facial hair than I do. But he is one of the most dynamic people that I know. And he means a lot to not only what I've been able to do, he's somebody I always confide in when I need to get something done. And I'm proud to be part of the organization that he's created, that he's a part of. It's our organization. He taught me what the meaning of we means and not just I. And I get the chance to bring him on, and we're going to have a healthy conversation today right here on the EGlaze Chronicles. Please welcome my guy, Mr. J. Bailey.
Glaze going on? Building 50 episodes, brother. Congratulations. That is big. And I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. You know, we always stream and do things, and we're trying to make things better, man. But I hate to start off this way, but it would be because I know you know these two gentlemen. You've been around these two gentlemen. They've meant a lot to you. Talk to us about what CT Vivian and John Lewis meant to you. You having a chance to speak to. Talk to us about what they meant to you and what their death means to us, and what we must do going forward.
Man, it is 2020 has taken a lot.
Yeah.
To look in 1 year, to lose Dr. Lowry, to lose Dr. Vivian, and less than 24 hours later to lose Congressman John Lewis. It's almost unthinkable.
Yep.
And it's a legendary kind of gut punch, because for far too long in Atlanta, we've had this luxury of having and walking amongst kings, amongst icons and legends. And oftentimes we took it for granted. You know, oh, that's Ambassador Young. Oh, that's CT Vivian. Oh, that's John Lewis.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you were with your children and John Lewis was in the room, Glaze, you would absolutely try to get a picture with him and your kids. Why? I mean, because of what he did for all people around the world. These young men, when they were young men, literally changed the world without firing a single shot.
Yeah.
And so, go ahead.
No, I mean, and you know, one of my regrets is that I don't meet enough of our leaders like that. And I see, I always say, I see, you know, the pictures, because I saw a picture recently when they had Lowry, Lewis, and Vivian, and they had Andrew in there. And I'm just sitting there like, I didn't meet neither. We need to, you know, and that's so not to interrupt what you were saying, but I want you to keep going. But I think we did take John Lewis for granted. We took CT for granted. We took Lowry for granted, and we taken Andrew for granted. And I take Hank Aaron for granted. These are guys that we grew up idolizing, man, and they have done so much for us. But keep going, man, on that thought, bro. I just want to add, you know,
like we're here because of them,
right?
And now we've got to think about our children and our children's children. Who will they be able to look to as icons and as legends and as people that sacrificed everything so they could have more? You know, who will they get excited about when they walk in a room with? And it's incumbent upon us, because a lot of us, and I don't think there's a singular answer, because I don't believe in this whole singular notion of this one leader that leads us all. It's going to take a whole lot of us growing up real quickly, maturing real quickly, dramatically, uncomfortably. We're going to have to do it right now. You know, when CT Vivian took that punch from Bull Connor, he was 40. John Lewis was 25.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think one of the most treasured moments I had, one of the first times I got to sit down with Dr. Vivian, just me and him, I asked him very humbly, like, you know, I'm here and I'm trying to do work, but Dr. Vivian, like, how did y'all do it? Like, literally, how did you do it at a young age? Some kids, they were some kids, man. He was one of the oldest statesmen. Everybody else was in their early 30s and in their 20s. He said, doctor, as he called everybody, he said, doctor, all the power is in the doing. It is in the action that you find anything that's transformative. And it was just really a note, because I asked him a follow-up question like, okay, got that, but what else? He said, that's it. He said, we were some kids, man. And while everybody else was talking about change and what needs to happen, we were out there making mistakes. We were out there moving forward, but more than anything else, we were doing something. My personal phrase around find problems that you can do something about and do something came from that conversation with CT Vivian. Like, yeah, maybe I can't solve all the world's problems, but I can do something. And let me find out what I can do, what's within my power right now, that I can do right now, starting where I stand with the people that are around me. What can I impact right now? And maybe the big problems become smaller because of what I'm able to do right here in the 3 feet surrounding. Right. And Dr. Vivian was one of the most humble, most incredible, most loving, most sharing, most intelligent, most powerful individuals I'd ever met. And John Lewis, you will never find, anybody that was on Facebook or Instagram or anything else in Atlanta, you probably saw 300 of your friends and all of them had a picture with John Lewis.
Yep.
He was one of the most accessible leaders that always showed up and was always about the people. Whether you agreed about his politics or not, you can't deny that young man sacrificed everything at the beginning of his life, and he gave everything towards the end of his life.
But did we take him for granted? Did we take them for granted? I mean, I think about our generation being kind of the in-between between them and this younger generation that we talk about. I feel like now that they're leaving us, we're kind of like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
How are we gonna fill that void?
The questions are coming now.
Mm-hmm. How are we going to fill that void? Who is going to be the equivalent to John Lewis for your grandchildren? Right. Who is going to be the equivalent to CT Vivian for your grandchildren? That we learn from, that inspire us, that stand up for us, that really lay the pathway that we can aspire and admire. We got to have some hard thought, deep conversations about where we are now. That's why I said we all got to grow up in a real way, because they were there. We didn't have to fill that big void because we leaned on their legacy.
Yeah.
And because we leaned on their legacy, we never really focused on building and charting our own course in the very dramatic way that they did. And that's not taken away from anybody out there doing work right now. But I'd be hard pressed to argue with anybody out there doing work right now that they're doing it at the level that Dr. King and Dr. Vivian and Dr. Lowry and John Lewis did at that age. And we're able to do and perform at a lower level because they performed at such a high level that all of these liberties and all of these freedoms and all of these things we're able to do is largely in part to their efforts 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, man, but know that there's a tremendous hole in the universe right now because those people are no longer with us.
But let me ask you this, with all that you've seen, and we'll get into more about some of the work you've done and the work we're all doing out here, do you still have that hope for that our leadership time? And I ask that because I can tell you sometimes I get a little frustrated and a little tired and a little think about it. And I like the shirt ownership because I think that's something that we're missing sometimes, is the ownership of these problems and leading it. But as a leader yourself, do you feel like today that you still have that hope that we can do some better things and do, like you said, that small piece that we all can do, solve some of those issues?
That's where it lives, brother. I think that the most dangerous person in the world is a person with no hope. We can't afford to lose all hope. If we lose all hope, then what's the point, Glade?
Right.
Like, without hope, why have your daughter walk around this earth every day if there's not at least some hope that things will be okay for her? And, a good friend of mine, Dr. Greg Ellison, he's at Emory.
Mm-hmm.
He tells his story about his aunt on the porch. And he was asking his aunt one day, Auntie, how do you change the world? When he was a young kid, he asked her, how do you change the world? And, you know, just like a Southern auntie would, she's rocking in her chair. She said, baby, I don't know much about changing the world. I don't even know how to change the world, but I do know how to impact the 3 feet around me.
Mm.
And in that one simple way of thinking is all the hope that I need in that, yeah, maybe I can't on my own eliminate poverty. I'll never be on my own to be able to eliminate racism or institutional bias. But there's a story that has always resonated with me. It's the story of the starfish. And there was a young man walking along the beach after a big rain. Thousands of starfish were washed up on the beach. He was walking along the beach and picking up the starfish and throwing them back in the water. Thousands of them. An old man who had been more seasoned, he was more skeptical, more hopeless, walked up to the young man and was like, hey, son, how do you possibly think you're doing any good? How are you helping the situation? There are thousands of starfish out on this beach and they're going to die. How you think you're going to make a difference? The young man kind of looked at him respectfully. He picked up one starfish, threw it back in the ocean. Said, I made a difference for that one.
Yeah.
That inherently in the incremental power of hope, the incremental power of doing what you can, starting where you stand and impacting the 3 feet around you, inherently we will always have hope because there always will be things that are within your control and things that you can change. And in that, there's infinite hope.
That's beautifully said, brother. That is beautifully said. Let me ask you this. You seem to be one that I always kind of I look at and I say, man, is he trying to, I know I shouldn't worry about you, but you're my brother, so your family, like you have so many people come at you and ask you for help and support. But what is your 3 feet? What are your 3 feet of things that you focus on so you can be not overwhelm yourself, but you know that you can help your 3 feet around you? What are some of the things that you focus on?
You know, I've accepted the burden of my 3 feet being more than 3 feet. And so, you know, with the work that you know that we're doing with the Russell Center, it's not just about entrepreneurship. It's about ownership. It's about controlling our own narrative. It's about doing things on our own terms. It's about creating wealth in our community. It's more than just starting businesses. When I talk about family and community in my neighborhood and people that I know, you know, it literally is about, as I consider myself an outsider with insider privileges. I grew up in Decatur,
Right.
DeKalb County. I didn't grow up in Jack and Jill or didn't go to the right schools or whatever else. So some of those connections in the bastions and circles of power, I was not a part of that. And so as many people as I can bring along with the things that I've been able to experience and create pathways and exposure and opportunities for folks that are just like me. I mean, that's my 3 feet, bro. It ain't about politics or likes or followers. It's about how do we get real about our people being in a better situation. And the authenticity that I come with, it's not about what I can get. I've had enough awards, I've had enough accolades, but what the hell do accolades mean if our people still dying and hurting? And that's just kind of how I see it, man. I think far too often, the celebrity of service is what drives people rather than transformational change. So, you know, and every day I work on that. I'm not perfect, but it is a thing that I'm cognizant of, and I'm very, very hard on myself around why I do things and what's my motivation. And to your point, yeah, sometimes I fail in that I try to do too much, take on too much, and drink too much of the ocean.
Right.
But I kind of made a deal with myself. I can live with that reality. I can die with that a lot. I can die with trying to do too much. I think it would kill me if I sat back and did too little.
Interesting. Which brings me to my next question. We'll talk about Russell Center because of its importance. But I asked you this once in person, personally, but I'm gonna ask you this on the show. You were doing your own thing. You had your own organization you was focused on. You had jumped on and you took it on, and it was the great Phoenix organization that you were part of. But this came into your life, the Russell Center. And I remember I asked you, I said, brother, you had your own thing. Why did you stop that course to take on this? Tell people what you told me about why did you decide to take on this role as the CEO and president of the Russell Center?
You know, there are a number of reasons, Glaze, and I'm trying to think what I may have shared with you because all of them are still very valid. Bro, there are very few times, and the thing is, even with the Phoenix Leadership Foundation, it didn't go away. You know, it's still right. So I still want to control our own narrative. However, there are very few times in life where you get to be a part of something that you know will outlast you, that are bigger than you. And they're very even rarer times where you get to be a part of something that could potentially change the course of history. I remember being a 14-year-old kid when I used to steal my mom's car and drive around Southwest Atlanta because I didn't believe Black people could live in houses that looked like that. Where I learned about a Herman J. Russell, the brother had a tennis court and an indoor pool 40 years ago.
40 years ago.
Neighborhood that he and 6 other families helped build because they wouldn't let Black people in Atlanta live north of Peyton Road. So they bought a cattle farm and built a neighborhood and patterned it after a Black Beverly Hills so Black working class, middle class folks could have a dignified place to live. Collier Heights, our mayor, Killer Mike, you run down the list of people that have come out of Collier Heights. Well, that was made possible by Mr. Russell. This is the brother that helped underwrite the civil rights movement, built half of our skyline, integrated the Chamber of Commerce on the state level and the city level. The only civil rights unrest we had in Atlanta, 100 students got locked up during the student movement and why Fair Street becomes Student Movement Boulevard, where RCIE is, the Russell headquarters building. They one phone call and one man bailed all 100 students out.
Wow.
You got to think of a Black man 70 years ago building a headquarter building in Atlanta, Georgia, that was a full city block wide and near 50,000 square feet.
Wow.
You know, to be able to take the legacy of one of the most prolific entrepreneurs in the history of our city, maybe even our country, take one of the largest buildings in America, certainly the largest institution dedicated to Black entrepreneurs and building that. But not only that, you've got the 42 acres that surround the building that's owned and controlled by the Russell family. Directly across the street from your alma mater, Morris Brown, Morehouse, Clark, Spelman, ITC, Morehouse School of Medicine, Georgia State is 2 miles down the road. Georgia Tech is 1 mile down the road. Georgia Tech is 2 miles down the road. We have the ability to do something in Atlanta, Georgia that nobody has ever done in anywhere. You got Silicon Valley, you got Cambridge with more Harvard and MIT, you got the Research Triangle, Duke, North Carolina, what they're doing in Austin, Texas. None of them have gotten diversity right. We have an opportunity in Atlanta, Georgia, unlike any other place on the planet, to do something that history will never forget for Black people, Black economics, Black innovation, Black entrepreneurship, Black business, and for Black people. And to have that kind of chance and that kind of shot, to put that kind of dent in history, I couldn't say no to it, brother. And I'm blessed to have the honor to really dig deep and try to create that environment and be a part of that movement. And right at that point, it's the perfect example of it's bigger than me. It ain't about Jay's idea of what success looks like. This assignment that I'm on is way bigger than me. And you've heard one of my personal slogans, like plant seed that will grow trees whose shade you may never sit under. And I thought this is a tremendous opportunity to plant seeds.
We talk about the Russell Center, and it's the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I'm glad to say that Optimize the Vision is a member of it, and I'm glad to be one of the founding.
To sound up.
Yeah. And tell us where we are now, because it's been over a year. It's been great. It's just seeing the growth of it. And is it better than you thought it would be? Is it where you thought we would be at this point? I know Corona and pandemic slowed some things down.
Yeah,
but has it grown that you saw it, that you would see what it is? Because I know a lot of us are still proud to be members, and we know what we're doing. We're set out to what we're doing.
It's really, brother, even, I mean, you know, we have a building that's not complete yet. If you go to the website, it still says coming soon. We've been doing some programming with our Founding 100 a little over a year now. But the early adoption and the love that was shown, even when we don't even have it all figured out yet. I mean, because the genesis of this, I got hired 2 years ago with a blank slate, a gutted out building, and saying go, and to go from zero, absolutely zero, to 2 years later to be where we are right now, is certainly accelerated, but I think it's beyond us. And certainly, if you ask me where we are on that continuum, even with all the micro successes that we've had thus far, brother, in my mind, we haven't even begun, because I see the vision for what this place will be and what it will represent. Not only the beautiful edifice of this building that we're going to create when we raise the money to actually build out and finish construction, but the system that we're going to develop. Because post-COVID, you know, when the fires die down and there are no more riots and the protests slow down, you know, Black people were in an economic pandemic before COVID-19. And so after all of this, after we get through all of this, we're going to need less symbols of hope, because a lot of people are doing symbolic gestures, and that's cool, and we need them. Right. But we're going to need less symbols of hope and more institutions that truly manufacture hope. Right. And we're going to need systems that are designed to combat systems, and an institution like RCIE can just sit at the epicenter of access, opportunity, exposure, hope for our community when it comes to economic scale, growth, business development, innovation. And we want to become that institution. We become the HBCU, if you will, for entrepreneurs. Partnering with Morris Brown, probably, as we start thinking about the reemergence.
Right.
But this becomes our place. Very few places in the country are owned by the people it serves. And especially something at this scale, 54,000 square feet and counting, that's owned by the Black folks that run it, that we built by Black people, owned by Black people, run by Black people, programmed by Black people, in a Black community for Black people. That doesn't happen a lot, Glaze.
Yeah.
And that sense of belonging that you get when you went to Morris Brown.
Right.
Like, you didn't have to fight for who you thought you were. As soon as you walked in, you saw value in your own reflection.
Right.
It's part of our charge to bring that kind of pride, dignity back to community, where we see value in our own reflection. We start to love one another again. We start to support one another again. We start to talk to one another again. We start to collaborate again, because we've got this institution that's channeling that, that's orchestrating that, and providing the vehicle for that to happen.
JJ, I hear you, man. My boy JJ asked a question. I'm gonna ask that a little bit later, because I'm setting up something with Jay because of what he has, some of the things he got going on. But I want to ask you this: seeing what happened in the city of Atlanta, seeing what's going on in the city, like, yeah, you grew up in Decatur, I knew all that, but you ATL till you die, bro. You got the hat on right now.
Oh, I was born on Boulevard. Make no mistake.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts? You see what's going on with what happened in the riots and all of that, with the movements and things of that nature. How would you describe the city of Atlanta now? Because of so important of what we're doing with the Russell Center. This is our city. This is what we're doing. How would you describe the mood of the city of Atlanta? Because the world is watching us, and this is the epicenter. We can call it what we want to. This is what what's going on in Atlanta. What are your thoughts about all the things that's been going on in Atlanta recently?
You know, you started the conversation talking about our legends that are no longer with us.
Right.
But another part of me says that it was necessary for them to die for us to live and to be born.
Yeah.
It was necessary for a C.T. Vivian and a Congressman Lewis and a Lowry to leave this earthly shell to make way for the Atlanta of the future. Like, there's a rebirth going on. New leaders are emerging. New voices are coming to the table. You know, because of the proliferation of these cameras that everybody has in their pocket, there are new realities that are being uncovered. There is a new way forward in Atlanta, and it feels like a rebirth, because something is happening right now that's different than anything else I've ever felt at any other time. It feels different. There have been movements before, there have been riots before, there have been protests before, but something feels different about right now. And the awakening, the great awakening of everyone thinking about, what more can I do? What more can I be? And I think COVID slowed the world down enough for us to actually have time to think about what's like this platform, brother. When did it start?
During the pandemic, right? Yeah, April, I think.
You had to sit down and think, how can I impact my 3 feet?
Yeah.
And so you sat and thought, okay, I can use my relationships to bring people on board, to share things that they know that I can share with the people that I impact.
Yeah.
If it's 10,000, if it's 1,000, if it's 100, if it's just 10 people, it's your 3 feet around you, Glaze, that you said, I can't do everything. I won't be able to solve every problem, but I can do this.
Yeah.
I can do this. Find problems that you can do something about and do something. This is your doing something. But there's so many other people just like you, Glaze, that are sitting back and thinking, okay, what more can I do? What talent do I have and I possess that I can give to the world? And we're seeing that happen at rates that we just haven't seen in the past.
Right.
I get excited. A lot of people, there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of trepidation out there, but I feel a certain excitement about what's about to happen in our city. New leaders are being birthed every day. People are finding their voice every day. People are thinking about doing things on their own because that job that they had, loyalty to for 20 years in a moment's notice laid them off.
Yep.
And what do you do now? New ideas are going to come out of this time. New businesses are going to come out of this time. New ways of doing business together are going to come out of this time. So, I'm motivated. I'm hungrier right now than I have been before, because it's go time, man. And shame on us if we don't come out of this better. Of course, maintain your health, maintain your sanity. And I'm not saying that everybody has to come out of this shot like a cannon, because some of us just got to worry about holding it all together. And that in and of itself and just holding it all together is a win.
Right.
But for those of us that have the luxury or the capacity to push through, the rest of the community is waiting on us. Glaze, there are people right now waiting on you to fulfill your vision, your dream,
right,
because their whole lives depend on it.
Right. What has been the biggest thing that you focused on during this time? You make me relaxed because of your I got to get out there to your beautiful 300 acres out there. But what are some things that have you focused on, and not only just for Leadership Day, but personally, because a lot of things we're finding out that when everything was supposed to be now, got to get it done, then the world said no, it don't. So what have you been focusing on as Jay Bailey? Because everybody wants you to help them, but what have you done to help Jay Bailey through this time to be ready for that next phase that everybody's waiting on and it's coming?
I mean, that's it, brother. You double down on what matters most. I mean, I'm wearing the show ownership, but it is about how can I put myself in a position to win? How can I put myself in a position that my great grandkids have an opportunity to be proud of the last name that we've gifted them? You talked about the property, but that's one piece. I got to protect myself at all times, and looking at ways to create escapes for myself, right? For my family, for my friends. What do you own and what do you control? We become what we see. And how many examples of people that look like you and I do we have of ownership models, owning the land, owning the business, owning the narrative? And I think that's where I get most of my joy, that I'm literally trying to put myself in a position to win.
Right.
Wealth has been my motivation right now, brother. I mean, if we're not talking about economics, in my mind right now, and I'm not saying this is for everybody, but in my mind, if we're not talking about economics, if we're not talking about how we can put ourselves in a better position to move forward economically, everybody that knows me too, that I'm not the biggest fan of politics. I got beautiful, amazing, talented, super leadership friends that are heavy politicos and elected officials. But I think oftentimes we're the only people that put political power in place before we put economic power in place. And so a lot of times our elected officials don't have the leverage that they need to get stuff done. So essentially they're celebrities with more responsibility.
Right.
This time to own the narrative. If we are going to be the Black Mecca, show me in the skyline where we own it. Show me where the jobs are created, where the wealth is being held. If you made a list of the top 50 wealthiest people in Atlanta, how many Black people in the Black Mecca make that list? I'd say maybe none.
Right.
So it's to deliver that promise, and I want to be a part of that solution. So when I start thinking about my 3 feet, it is leveraging all these gifts, all these relationships, all these things that I've been, given and shown favor with. And how do I see them, how do I leverage them to be a blessing to my family, to be a blessing to those in my circle, to be a blessing to my community? Because the only way that you truly control the narrative is the only way to control the narrative is to own it, to create it, to optimize the vision.
Right.
You got to own it. And I tell people often, Glaze, how many people, especially when they come to me with business ideas or big ideas that they want to execute, one of my first questions now is, how many people have to give you permission before you're successful? If you got to ask the bank for money, if you got to ask this person for land, if you got to ask this person for materials, you got to ask this person, and they got to all say yes before you're successful. How many blocks do you have, and how much of that narrative do you truly control? And it's a question that I've had to ask myself, and I want to put myself in a position where I don't have to ask that many people for permission to live out my dream.
One of the greatest things you told me before I did Optimize, we had to talk. I was supposed to meet you in person, but we talked over the phone, and you was like, I was like, yeah, man, I need to build this and I need to build my board. And you like, can you do the work? I'm like, yeah, I can. I got the resource, but do the work for it first. Do we think too much sometimes? Are we still afraid as a people to do the work, in your opinion? Or are we getting better with it? I mean, we like you said, I hate this, I totally have to agree with you. We kind of leaned on our ancestors or our people who worked for us to say, well, they took all the, John was, till he died, was taking hits from people. You know what I'm saying? And
right.
It seemed like we were looking for permission to do things. Is that the biggest obstacle with our people, or are we still the economic part and all of that? What is that obstacle that keeps us from growing and doing for us, as you can see it?
It's to use your example, and we'll kind of focus and make it personal so that nobody feels like I'm stepping on toes. The cost of perception is killing us. The cost of perception is killing our community. So let's talk about that conversation you and I had. Your goal was to serve kids and give them a pathway, right? But you were thinking about how it looked to be in my CEO and my executive director, who's on my board, what's my logo look like? And if you take all of that and ball it up, you could have named it anything. Your board could exist or not. Your title could be CEO or executive director. It doesn't really matter as long as the end result, the mission, is being carried out. And so I translate that kind of cost of perception to everything. If I take the right angle photo and put it on social media, I look like a servant hero. But I hadn't really done the work that's necessary the day after. But today I got 800 likes. But the next day I'm not doing a damn thing because I got all of my energy from the likes. Right. Or I look the part, because poverty has changed in our city. 71% of Black people in Atlanta are what's called liquid asset poor. We don't have $2,000 in a bank to satisfy an emergency. Therefore, the new poverty ain't just a shack on the west side. It's a 5-bedroom brick house, 2 cars in the garage, and we don't have $2,000. But we look successful.
Right.
So the car and the clothes and the house gives you the perception that I'm doing okay when I'm really not. And we're okay with just living with the perception. It doesn't go layers deep. So when you talk about a John Lewis, or when you talk about a CT Vivian, and we talk about, oh yeah, Jay's in the community, hold me accountable, because is it more than just the picture I post? Is it more than just a Facebook or an Instagram post? And if it's not, then that perception that I'm putting out there is not authentic, and we wonder why the needle's not moving. CT Vivian was not going to rest until we got the actual right to vote. Today, that may be equated that I went to a protest and I took the picture, and you know what? I'm fighting for our rights to vote. Like 3 years later, we still don't have the right to vote, but I'm still cheering for my efforts. Everybody wants credit for working on the problem. Nobody actually, nobody wants to solve the problem. Everybody wants credit for the solutions and the action, but let's solve the problems and put the work in to solve problems. That perception thing is powerful in our community, brother. From what wealth looks like and what wealth really is, what action looks like and what action really is, what impact looks like and what impact really is, what's really valuable and what really isn't. And that's why I think I get excited about this rebirth that I feel that's happening. That we've got to start seeing real change, real transformative change that's lasting, and the receipts will show. The receipts will show what's real and what's not.
It's, you look at what, and I've been honored to have some great people. When I talk to Clay and talk about his position and doing what he's trying to do for the community and things of that nature, the people that are in your circle and the things that what energy do you get off of them? I mean, you know, everybody, you are for the people, but you do listen to a group of people and talk to them about it. What do you get off of them, and what do they give you to push you to do better, to do more, to extend that 3 feet, like you're saying? I'm gonna keep saying that 3 feet because I think people really need to understand. Do your 3 feet, what you can, but what do you do? What positive energy do you get off of people?
I'm blessed to have some really dope brothers in my circle. You mentioned one of them, Greg Clay. You, brother, I think that it's kind of a reverse motivation.
Mm-hmm.
If you put out there you need $10,000 for an activity that you want to provide to some kids, and I'm not able to cut that check, it motivates me. If I'm not able to put Greg in a position to win, it motivates me. When I look at all of the brothers that I have around me that I love dearly, that I consider family, and we're not where we want to be able to take care of our families for generations, to do the things that are in our wildest dreams, that kind of thing is motivating to me because it never allows me to celebrate. I think I remember told you a while ago, I start every day at 0. And it may be detrimental. It may not be the right mindset to have, but you know, I just don't think that we're far enough down the line for me to start celebrating wins that I've had. And it's a problem for me. And I've had counselors and therapists say the very same thing. But for me, it is really tough to celebrate all the things. If you look at my office, ain't nothing on my walls. Sure, I got awards and everything else. And I see a little league picture in the back there from your first 8th grade or 8-year-old Pee Wee League back there, bro.
Yeah.
But my thing is, it's hard for me to celebrate successes when there's so much work to be done ahead. Mm-hmm. When Glaze wants to live life at a different level, and I don't have the capacity to just make that happen for my boy, right? Mm-hmm. Ambassador Young, I remember Tim telling me one time, man, like, Jay, I just want to be able, one of my lifelong dreams was just be able to cut a check for $1 million and give it to somebody and not even think about it. Mm. And I don't know if he'll ever get there, but, you know, to have the capacity to actually just make dreams come true, to live our best lives, to absolve ourselves from those things that we can erase. Like, yes, you get laid off from your job. So what? I got you, bro.
Right.
Don't even think about it.
Right.
Those kind of things motivate me, man. But, you know, while I'm thinking like that, you know, I've got a you, or I've got a Bobby, or I've got a John Beal, or I've got a Courtney English, or I've got a Greg Clay. I got all of these people around me that are continuing to fight for that 3 feet. And their 3 feet continues to get wider. And they're the kind of folks that we've invested in that I know will never stand still. None of the people that I named, yourself included, I can guarantee, it's not even a bet, it's a guarantee that 10 years from now, you're not going to be in the same place that you are right now. You will kill yourself to be in a better position than you are. Because I remember the day that you started your sports show and when you did your first shows and how you grew from that. And think about even from now where, okay, you had this idea while someone would say, you know, I want to do this platform. And they'll continue to talk about, I want to do, I should do, I could do. You did it. CT Vivian told us all the power is in the doing. It may not be perfect, but you should never let perfect stop progress. And bro, you may not have had it all perfect. The lighting may not have been right. The sound may not have been right, but you were doing it.
Right.
And that's where all the power lies. I took that as the gospel from Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian, because it's so real, man. So many would just sit back and say, I want to do this, and never do it.
Right. One thing that I've enjoyed watching you grow is you and your family, and your wife, Blaine, what she's been able to do. And she's if you don't know, Blaine is a NBC correspondent national, and she's been able to do some great things. What had that done for you? Because I've seen you before and now, and to that, we always talk about powerful Black couples, and I always consider y'all powerful Black couples because of what y'all to do. What has she and what did she do for you that pushed you? And again, and the reason why I'm bringing up things like power, because I want people to understand it's going to take a collective effort for all of us to get things done. So that's why I'm bringing up friends, and I'm bringing up your wife and things of that nature. But what has she done for you because of what she's done? Because I look at y'all are my push sometimes. Okay, all right. They had DC and Atlanta for a minute. Then they shut. You know what I'm saying? They had this going. Okay, all right. We saw all of that, and what has she done for you and push you to do more? Because like you say, you might start up at zero. Well, how does she help you to get more than zero and get higher each and every?
It's Blaine has an unbelievable work ethic. Unbelievable. Today is what's today? Wednesday? Thursday? What's today? Wednesday. Blaine did a full day, woke up at like 5 a.m. to do the Today Show. She reported on MSNBC all day. She did nightly news and got the call that she needed to then drive to Nashville, Tennessee that night.
Wow.
Blaine finished Today's Show, MSNBC hits all day, did nightly news, drove to the airport, rented a car, drove to Nashville, got a couple of hours of sleep, and was on the Today Show the very next day at 6 a.m.
Wow.
She's in Nashville right now.
Wow.
And she'll be driving back to go right back at it. When you start to think about Blaine, who is living out her wildest dream, this is the dream that she's had in her entire life. To be living it, and to be living it at one of the highest levels, one of the largest news networks in the world, and she's almost every night, multiple times a day and in the morning. To know that she was the 9-year-old girl in Atlanta, Georgia, doing her first live report from the Olympics in '96.
Right.
Her father brought her to the Olympics in Atlanta. She grew up in Oklahoma, and there's a video of her doing her first live report. Then you fast forward 20 years in Brazil, Blaine is now an adult covering the Olympics for NBC.
Wow.
So when you have someone like Blaine, who then also is one of the most compassionate, caring, humble individuals, when she has every reason to not be, it's just a beautiful thing where we understand each other's hustle. We understand our aspiration. She'll never get from me, babe, why you got to go? And I'll never get from her, babe, why you got to work late? Or why you got to do this next thing? Or why you trying to do everything? She understands. And so, and at the same time, in that mutual respect that we have for one another, our dreams are limitless, because we're never going to look at, when I came to Blaine about this play with buying all this property, she was like, and she probably knew in her heart of hearts, whether she said yes or no, I was going to do it anyway. And so, for her to always be supportive of my dreams, for me to be supportive of her dreams, it's hard to lose. Because, I've been in relationships before where some of the stuff I come up with would sound crazy, would definitely be talked down. And why you want to do that? Or why do you want to do this? We don't have that, man. And it's this kind of supportive energy that keeps you motivated. And it certainly doesn't allow you to operate on a 6 when the operation at an 8 or above is kind of like the benchmark. That's the 8 is probably the worst day we're going to have, because 6 just doesn't even show up on the radar. Even if we chilling at 8.
I got to ask this question because I've always thought this in the back of my mind because of where I'm from. I'm from Lincoln, Georgia. You know that. You got ties in Eatonton. So my man JJ asked this: how can we spread what we're trying to do in Atlanta to the rural areas of Georgia?
Part of my
plan. There are a lot. Because I think about that a lot because Georgia, even though Atlanta is the Black Mecca, we got counties and cities in this state, in this country that need to do what we're trying to do. So what are your thoughts on that? I think that's an interesting question. Thank you, JJ, for that question.
JJ, I appreciate it, man. We're going to have to go back because you better believe, ain't too many Black people that 3-4 generations from Atlanta. Most of our parents, all the Black folks are here, most of our parents come from Lincolnton and Eatonton and Screven County and South Georgia. And that's where we're from. And even to the point of what do we own and what do we control, part of our roots is agriculture. And you got to realize all wealth comes from the land. All the way, there's nothing that you can throw at me right now that I can't trace all the way back to originally coming from the dirt. Nothing.
Right. Exactly.
And we used to own the land, and now we kind of frown at rural living. But I used to wonder, how do white boys always have a brand new $50,000 truck? Well, maybe they don't look like you. Maybe they ain't got the same education. Maybe they don't talk as slick as you city people, but they own 3,000 acres of land.
Right.
And that 3,000 acres of land is worth $7.5 million. So when they come to the bank or the dealership, they just throw them the keys because they know their credit's good.
Yep.
You know, part of the reason that we bought the property in Eatonton and will continue to buy more is because of that very reason, JJ, that we've got to return to the thing that got us here, understanding agriculture, understand owning the land, understanding that if we do what we do in Eatonton, my hope is to create 30 to 40 jobs in Eatonton for people that look like me to make more than anybody else in that town will pay them, to give them a dignified existence and a pathway to prosperity. And so, you know, it will take us believing in us and returning to what worked for us, to own the land, to own the narrative, because it's necessary, man. It's where we come from. And it's when I talked about that reset, it's time for a lot of us to go home, man. Come home. You can do both. You can be a city boy with country roots.
Yep.
But make no mistake, in the state of Georgia, we think it's sweet in Atlanta. Atlanta, compared to the economy of the state of Georgia, is a blip. Agriculture runs our state. It's the largest industry in our state by far.
Wow.
But we ain't nowhere in that conversation. We don't even show up on the radar when you start talking about metrics in agriculture and Blacks in agriculture. We're not even part of the conversation, but it's the largest industry in our state.
Wow.
We ain't even there.
That's the point. Talk to us about it. I know you mentioned it, the 300 acres that you purchased. Tell us what the name of it is. I think it's a cool name, man, and it drives me. I do have a few acres in my hometown. I'm working with you.
Yeah, no doubt, man.
But
get you some more, bro. Go get you some more.
I gotta get. I'm 297 away from you, but it's still. Talk to us about it, man. Talk about that purchase and that need that you had that you wanted to make sure you got that.
Man, it's so it is the preserve on Lake Sinclair.
At Lake Sinclair.
My grandfather, you know, worked at the Georgia Power Plant on Lake Sinclair most of his career. When my family, I don't know if any of us own any property on the lake, but the lake has been there for over 30, 40 years. When you talk about access and opportunity, when I talk about my father, who the first time I showed him the property broke down and cried, because him growing up in Eatonton, Putnam County, JJ, so this is rural America, you know, when he was growing up in the segregated South, there were parts of Eatonton he wasn't allowed to go to as a Black man. You know, when I think about all of the property and the acreage that our family had owned through the years, some of it taken, some of it stolen, some of it sold away because we prioritize some perception of wealth over the property, where I've got cousins that sold acres that they had just to get a house or a car, and really didn't realize what they were doing because maybe they weren't exposed to a new reality. You know, it's for me, it's the recapturing of a legacy that I was born into that we have a very good chance of losing completely. And so, you know, it's kind of my obsession right now around how much of it can we own and control. You know, 400 acres is the goal. It's 40 times 10. I'm gonna get a t-shirt made for it. 400 acres is the first goal. So that's that 40 acres that they promised us, and I want to multiply that by 10. 40 times 10. But how do I get to 10? It's for the 5 generations that came before us and for the 5 generations that are coming after us, and we're hoping that their walk doesn't have to be as long or as hard as ours.
Right.
But that's just the start, brother. I've been able to be in part of organizations where I've been able to see behind the kimono and see how the sausage is made and see how the bread is baked in our state. And I want to get in the game as long as I have the opportunity right now. As we're building, I want to go as hard as I possibly can over these next 5 years to sprint really, really hard, to put my family and generations yet unborn into a position where they have options, they have opportunity, and they have the resources to back it up.
We talked about this, and I want to, what do you see next coming up for us? First, we got to get through this pandemic and get out and do some things. But with all what we're seeing, with all this, with this refresh, like this rebirth that you're talking about, what do you see next? I know you're not Nostradamus, but I know you have your hand on the pulse of things and you see things. Sure. What are your thoughts on what's next in that future? Because we always work to do and build. I always tell everybody, I have people build paths for me. It's time for us to build highways. And that's my goal, is to build a highway off the paths we've been given.
Yeah.
What do you see as far as our future and what's going on next for us?
I think the necessity of community is going to take on a whole new meaning. I think that we're going to think more inwardly, more so than we ever have before. Well, not ever before, but in recent history.
Right.
I think for a long time, the only value add proposition to success in our community was how far we could move away from it. And I think that now is a time for us to come back to community because we need each other more than ever. Right. Our world, our country is more polarized than it's ever been. The conversation of race is on the forefront. Right. Those that aren't with us are making it very known that they aren't and never have been and probably never will be. So they're turning back inward to supporting our own institutions. As you see athletes now turning from the big D1 contract and now looking at HBCU, as you start to look at people coming back into the communities that they grew up in, I think that this rebirth comes with a recommitment to community. There are going to be a whole lot of us that aren't going to be able to go to those jobs or go back to those jobs that we depended on for so long because that job is no longer there. So that's going to necessitate that we actually think of a new way forward. And oftentimes it may be the opportunity to live out that dream of that business that you wanted to start or create. I just think that there's this Renaissance period when they talk about the Harlem Renaissance, when arts and business and all these things kind of emerge. I think we're on the precipice of another Renaissance for Black people around the country. And certainly in a city like Atlanta, being like the Harlem Renaissance, it's the Atlanta Renaissance, where we have all the pieces from sports to entertainment, to music, to dance, to arts, to business, to commerce, to like all of that. I think that we're about to see this wellspring of ingenuity and innovation from our communities, by our communities, and supported by the community.
We'll end with this, man. So tell people some of the things that Jay Bailey, I know it's a lot, but some of the things that you're focused on and you're working on and where they can find out more about some of the things that you got going on.
Yeah, man. Follow me on LinkedIn. Jay Bailey, JayBailey. I think Instagram is JAY4Hope. Twitter's that. Facebook is, I think, the same, James J. Bailey. The website, RCIE.org. The Russell Center, we didn't get really much into it. That's for a different day. But we are trying to create the largest center in America dedicated to building and growing and scaling our businesses. We've got to be the epicenter. One of my newest challenges, I'm a little bit hoarse right now because I literally just came off the block talking to groups of 10, 15, 20 young men that are selling water on our corners. It's out of control. People are getting shot. People are getting hurt. And the only real option that they have is to start locking our young brothers up, and there's a better way forward. Recently named to an organization or a committee or council to help think through what we do with our boys on the corner. So it's a new passion of mine, but it all ties back into entrepreneurship and legacy.
Right.
Getting these young men to think differently, to think higher, or certainly just think more organized, but more than anything, to think. And so, you know, there are just so many things that I'm passionate about now, but all of it really cycles around a pathway forward for our people that's rooted in capacity and economics and the ability to do for self and control our own narrative. We've got to control our own narrative. We have far too long let other people dictate what we appreciate, what we value, what we support. And it's just time to take control of that again. Nobody knows us better than us. So why are we for so long to allow other people to tell our story? That's got to stop.
Yeah. And the reason why I'm holding my Russell Center, because I do want to, one of my goals is to do a show from there. Things that we do there and have you speak there and do an interview there, that we can do it, because I think it's, you know, I've done a lot in these last few years, but to be a part of that was so special, because what I can say that you've done and what we've all done and what the people who are behind the Russell family is we're trying to eliminate the obstacles that people keep saying are in our way. And
come on, bro.
And the way I'm telling you, I tell everybody to see what our boy at Symphony Chips is doing.
Oh yeah,
and I told everybody, I said, that came from that building that y'all don't know about, and I can't wait till we continue to show people what we can do. Well, Jay, man, I couldn't have had a better 50th show, man. I appreciate for all that you do for me, what you've done for me, brother, and what you're doing for our community. Any shout outs you want to give, brother? Anything you want to finish up with before we go? Leave people with a positive thought if you got one.
Hey, man, it's shout out to the Orange Room crew, Orange Room Radio, knows who they are. One time for the Cater, one time for the A. We do all this for the town, and just, you know, family, wake up. It's time to come home. It's time to get serious about who we are, and it's time to live out the promise that we made to the world. If we're gonna be the Black Mecca, let's deliver on that promise and show them what a Black Mecca really is. And I think we got all the pieces necessary to make history. So let's do something that history will never forget.
Wait till y'all see that 30 for 30 for that Orange Room crew. Boy, when y'all see who was in that crew, boy, y'all gonna be, wow, all that came out of that. Yeah,
no doubt, man, no doubt. Orange Room forever.
Orange Room forever, man. Well, thank you, brother. Thank you, everybody. Always. I'm so humbled, man. Thank you, everybody who's been listening for 50 shows. Y'all dealt with me for 50. We got 50 more and more coming, man. And like Jay said, we want to be our own solution. And one of the reasons I did this is because we don't own our media. I want us to own our media. And that's the thing that I'm focused on. We're going to continue to do this. And hopefully the EGlaze Chronicles will start seeing some people come on who are running for elections and things that nature. So we already got that. For my guest, my partner, my brother, Jay Bailey, this is EGlaze signing off. 50 shows. Thank you. We appreciate you. And remember to continue to optimize your vision. All right. Thank you.